from Brunswick.
Roger Burley, public member for Fort Island.
Amanda Beal, Commissioner, Department of Conservation and Forestry.
Pat Kelleher, Commissioner, Department of Marine Resources.
Steve Walker, Director, LMF.
Jim Norris, public member, Winthrop.
Board members who are online. We'll start with you, Mac.
Mac Hunter, public member from Amherst.
Judy.
Morning, everyone. Judy Camuso, Commissioner of Fish and Wildlife.
Everybody.
Catherine. Oh, Catherine. I think you are Catherine. I'm sorry.
Good morning, Catherine Robbins Halstead, public member, Searsmont.
Great. I'm not going to do introductions of members of the public, but I would like staff to please introduce themselves.
Laura Graham, Senior Planner, and we are recording.
Thank you. Thank you.
Jason Goulet, Senior Planner.
Laura Drury, Senior Planner.
Cameron Roberts, staff. Amy Atkins, ISNW.
Thank you very much. Housekeeping, just your per diem forms, just, I think you probably all have them in your packet, but just pass those back into staff. We changed back and forth between buildings, so if you need to step out for a break, bathrooms down to the left, break room across the hall. We have a very, very lengthy agenda, and the time frame to which has not, to complete the work has not really changed. So I want to just try to make sure we keep the board on task and on target. Please go through the chair if you have comments that you'd like to make. Obviously, we don't want to cut short conversations around projects. So we will try to do our best to ensure that we get through the agenda as efficiently as we possibly can.
Could I clarify one thing, Chair?
You can.
Thank you, sir. I don't believe your per diem slips were in the packet, my oversight, so I'll email those out to you or get those to you today.
Or no challenge.
Or
Yeah, thank you for that. We're going to go right on to actually, before I go down through, before we get to the agenda, is there any changes or omissions to the agenda? Yeah.
Well, perhaps you'll lead into that. Based on information that we received regarding public access and other information, I hope to reconsider motion made last time.
Okay, let me take a minute to talk about that issue. This is the Kennebago project that we debated at length at the last board meeting. At that board meeting, I made a statement about reconsideration in a 2/3 majority at the time. I chair way too many boards. And at that time, what I did is I confused a policy at the Atlantic State Marine Fisheries Commission where a board on an action must, for reconsideration, must have a 2/3 majority. So in this case, a simple majority would do, and it is because there was no action taken, the ability for the board to reconsider at a future meeting is wide open. So there are no restrictions from a Robert's Rules standpoint. So this was a conversation that Mr. Norris brought up to me. I know the Range Lakes Heritage Trust had submitted some comments to us. I did ask our executive director to go back to our AAG just to make sure we're verifying that your board chair is correct, and they did that. So we do, I apologize for that confusion up front. Again, I chair too many meetings and too many policies running around in my head sometimes. So from that standpoint, Jim, are you asking for, you would like to reconsider that vote?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion
Okay.
as per the advice or the
Yeah.
format that the AG.
Okay.
Chair, can I?
No, I'm going to keep it at the board. Thank you. So what I'd like to do then, because we had a very lengthy debate on that, I'd like to just take care of some of the housekeeping issues. Item 2, 3, 4, 5, And then add that into the agenda before we get to the items that we need to act on, so we don't delay. I don't want to get to the end of a very lengthy meeting and have another long debate. So I'd like to try to take care of this expeditiously up front if we could. Is there any objections to the board to adding a reconsideration motion after item number 5? Judy Camuso has her hand up. Commissioner?
Thanks, Commissioner. And I don't have any, is my camera on? Can you guys see me?
Yeah, you're all set.
Okay. I just wanted to make you aware that I need to leave at around 11:20. So if, and I recognize that I sort of need to be present for a revote there. So if there's any way we can do that before 11:20, that would be great.
If we add it as I propose, that should be no problem, Judy.
Great.
Are you going to have staff? Obviously, the staff can't vote after you leave. Do you want Bethany to sit in on your behalf?
Yes,
Just so we have the benefit of IF&W's guidance.
for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Perfect. Great. Thank you. Okay, with that in mind, and no objections, I'm going to put down the agenda through the agenda items. Item number 2 is the minutes of the June 27th and August 24th meetings. Assume you've all had an opportunity to review.
I move we accept.
We have a motion from Roger to accept, seconded by Jim Norris. Any comments?
There was one change, Chair. I don't believe Mac Hunter's presence was noted in the June 27th meeting, so we got that, and we're going to change that.
Okay, Mac, I'm assuming that's what your hand was raised for? Okay, great. With that added, the motion and to the seconder, I'm assuming you're okay with adding Mac? Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, is there any objections? Seeing none, the motion passes without objection. Item number 3 is fund balances. So I'm going to turn that over to Steve.
Certainly. So let's do the numbers, as they say. So this first slide, as you can see, not much has changed since last. What has changed behind the scenes, of course, is allocations, which you'll see in an upcoming slide. And one thing, very interesting point that is not included here is, as of yesterday, our interest on our new account is up to $106,914. So we're making money, folks. Yeah.
Did I hear that right? I'd keep that a little quiet.
Yeah. All right, if you could change the slide, please. So here are our current allocations with the active projects, $17 billion, getting ready to go out the door. You can see it broken down by category. Next slide, unless there's questions. Oh, this is not the slide I was thinking about, but here you go. Recent, there we go. Thank you. So, status of current funds, you can see unallocated at the bottom for community, for conservation and recreation at $7,895,000 and change. If you add in set asides, we're down to about $6,100,000 that will be available for round 12 coming up. Is there another slide? There you go for farmland. Similarly, with the proposals in this round, we're considering $1 million. We'll have still $1 million and change left for upcoming round 12 as well. Any question on fund balances to date?
No questions, we'll have you move right along.
Okay. I'll hand it over to Jason on this one, if you don't mind.
Okay, so in your board packet is some draft workbook language around public access, while this is all fresh in everybody's mind. And what we're not looking for a board motion to accept this at this point. This is just for discussion, like I said, while it's fresh in everybody's mind, and it will be included in the workbook that is eventually put forward for the board to adopt.
Yeah.
So we're not looking for a motion at this stage. So two things about this. First, this is not, we don't think this is a new policy. We think this is a clearer statement of what we have been doing. We're trying to clarify what we consider to be guaranteed public access, the different forms that can take, and also clarify the process by which the board can go about waiving that standard condition of funding. So we hope that this is just sort of, again, clarifies the existing policies for the benefit of the applicant community. That is all I have to say, and
Thanks, Jason. Back to the board, Barbara.
I think this is good work, Jason, and I particularly like that at the front end with the proposal that we would get some information that would be valuable during the scoring process. I do have one word suggestion that I would like to consider.
Love a good word suggestion.
But on the second page, on the second full bullet, starting with the LMF board recognizes, blah, blah, blah. At the end of that, it reaffirms the discretion of the board to do this. And then it says this waiver is at the discretion of the LMF board and will be granted. I would ask that will be changed to may to reaffirm that this is totally at the discretion of the board.
Yeah. Yeah, I appreciate those subtleties in language. So I would probably, unless there's objection, adding that change to the draft.
absolutely.
Yeah, great. Any hands from the board online? Jim?
Just that I was going to draft something to give to you in writing sometime in the very near future.
Oh, just additional comments on it? Absolutely.
That'd be great.
Yeah. So I think that's I think that's certainly what timing, Jason, you're thinking for formalizing this at a future board meeting. I mean, so
When we get into, when we draft the next workbook, the next round.
Yeah.
These changes would be in that and the board would adopt it at that stage.
yeah, okay. And I appreciate the comment that you made about kind of clarifying what basically has been existing practice, right? So I think that's I think it's very worthwhile making these changes. This is one of those items where I want to just open it up quickly to members of the public for very quick comments, if you have any. Just because this is an issue that has been discussed a lot here of late. So is there any member of the public that has any comments on proposed public access policies? Obviously, you'll have an opportunity to submit anything in writing to the board, to the staff for the board's consideration. And I don't see any other hands in the room. Great, then we will move right along. And that will bring us to an item of new old business. And so I'm going to turn this over to Jim, but then I'm going to ask, after a motion is made, I'm going to ask staff for a quick recap. And depending on the direction it goes, then I may reach back out to you, Dick, if you don't mind. We'll see how the conversation goes, okay?
Point of order, because I think Jim, I understand what his motion is going to be, but I think we should formally add this item to the agenda by a vote of the board before any motions are made. That's my understanding of Robert's rules.
Yeah, we could. So this would be, that was my intent of saying we would add it between item number 5 and 6 as a new agenda item. Jim, why don't you explain what you want to do, and then then we can formally add the item.
Well, as I stated earlier, it's based on the clarified position that Jason has given and the AG's comments, and the importance of projects. It's my intent to make a motion to reconsider prior motion we voted on regarding the Kennebago project.
Okay, and and that is a motion that is fair game as far as, Robert's rules is considered. So why don't you hold that motion? And I'm assuming the motion is as we discussed in the last board meeting, no changes, what you're not.
I think it's
Well, it's first a motion to reconsider and then a motion to
Okay.
confirm funding.
Yes, okay. Again, I'll ask the board, is there any objections to adding this to the agenda? Seeing no objections, I'm going to turn back to Mr. Norris to make a motion for reconsideration.
I move to reconsider the prior motion regarding the Kennebago Headwater and Kennebago Woodlands projects.
I'll
Have a
second it.
Second by Commissioner Camuso. Trying to recall my Robert's Rules order now, a motion to reconsider, but it's not a motion to table. So is there any comments on a motion for reconsideration?
I'm hung up on order here. Is
Yeah.
it really a motion to reconsider? It's really just a motion, the original motion. He wants to put the original motion before us today. We're not reconsidering.
No, I made that as per this, what I believe to be the suggestion of the AGs, that to get it onto the tape.
I thought you were just gonna put the motion on the table again.
No, that's next. So that would be the next motion.
Attorney Spencer might have insights.
He's not our attorney, or mine, but I will give Dick an opportunity to comment.
I think Barbara is actually correct. You don't need a motion to reconsider what happened. You're free to make the motion again.
Correct.
So you don't need, technically under Robert's Rules of Order, because this is a new session of the board, you don't need a motion to reconsider what happened in a previous session. You can just make the same motion again.
Yes, I don't disagree what he's saying. I think from a structural standpoint, we are considering what we're talking about, right? We made a motion, we're reconsidering it. However we want to structure it, I think it's the board prerogative as far as what we're doing here.
I was simply following what appears to be the advice of the AG here, so.
Yeah.
I apologize if it's out of order.
Yeah, no, I don't believe it is as it matters. I think at the end of the day, we're gonna have a motion on the table, right? I think pure and simple, that's where we're gonna end up. Is there any objections to the motion on the table? Seeing none, motion passes. I'll look back to Mr. Norris.
I move to confirm funding for the Kennebago Headwaters and Kennebago Woodlands project.
I ask, you have a blank screen, blank, whatever you call it, page to work on the fly?
I do not.
I can absolutely pull up a Word document and work on the fly.
Can we do that just so we have it visible for the board members?
Oh, visible.
You want to put something, here, I'll stop screen sharing and you start.
Okay, all righty. Hold on, let me get,
That
hold on, let me walk and chew gum here. Let's see how this goes. All right, I'm gonna share my screen. And
Stop sharing.
here we go. Here we go. Hot dog. Looks like it's working. Okay, blank slate.
All right, here we go, something.
You
Can
restate
you pull up the slide from the August meeting?
Yes, I can. Because I didn't share my screen. Let me stop sharing. I didn't share. I thought I'd be smart and share just the window, of course. So now this. Okay.
There we go.
Now I can't do both. I can't share the Word doc and the.
that's fine. Is that your language?
This is the language that was used
The
in
last
the
time.
August meeting.
And so is that, Jim, does that reflect your,
No, it didn't. I would add, subject to the agreed upon special conditions.
okay, so
I'm sorry.
can you just do a cut and paste into your Word document so we have Jim's motion.
So I'm adding subject to the agreed upon, it's,
So it's in there.
It's already there.
It's already in there.
Yes.
yeah,
I did not mention.
So that what is there is your,
okay,
Alright.
okay, all right.
and if you want to see those special conditions, they're on one of the earlier slides and that you have, Laura.
Oh, you want to see them?
Let's hold on that. So Jim, your motion. Confirm funding for the Kennebago Headwaters and Kennebago Woodlands projects with existing public access, subject to the agreed upon special conditions.
Yeah.
Do we have a second?
Second.
The second by Commissioner Camuso. Discussion. Barbara.
So I am interested in the special conditions. And,
Can you bring them up, please, staff?
and as I recall, one of them, the first one, suggested that RLHP would include all of the public as guests. And so I do have a question about that because my understanding is that it would be an overly encumbered easement. So I don't know if they would like to respond to that, but some attorneys did reach out to me concerned about that. And the second one is that that RLHT was going to continue to make all reasonable efforts to get legal access to those 4 miles. And Attorney Spencer mentioned there were heirs that they were going to reach out to. And I wondered if we could ask for an update on that.
Yeah, I think that's appropriate. So I'll turn to Attorney Spencer for comments.
I think all I can really say is that we are working on that and we don't have anything yet that we can disclose, but we think we have identified who the people are. And we're in discussion.
With those people. And how about number one? The concern.
That's a good idea in any case, just for us to, in the project agreement, to confirm that, I mean, it will be part of the project agreement that members of the public will be permitted to use the lands. So I think we might as well explicitly say that they are our invitees. That way, that's to me, a very strong legal argument as to why our current deed is sufficient. If there are invitees and we have the right of way over the road. But so in a way, this is belt and suspenders. We should put the first one in the project agreement regardless, and then we'll keep trying to get more explicit, clear public access so that any overburdening argument would be eliminated. We don't think the overburdening argument is valid as a problem because at the time that Brown Company got the rights of way, they were letting the public use their lands. So that's what the parties contemplated both before and after we got our deeded rights. But it makes sense to say it right in the project agreement that the public, members of the public will be our invitees, which is another way of saying we agree that the public has the right of access to our land.
I think just to remind the board, as part of due diligence in the creation of those type of conversations would happen. So the board would be able to, I think, revisit that particular issue to make sure we're comfortable with it since it is voted on. Okay. Any other comments? Yes, Amanda.
Yeah, so I wasn't here at the last meeting. I definitely, read the minutes and had some conversations just to try to help myself understand what the hesitation might have been. And I think I in my mind, I remember this, but I think I said something about this at the meeting before that, guaranteed public access is never 100%. I mean, we've run into that with BPL and I think, you know, it sounds to me like there have been some really good steps and good thinking that are in place and how to try to sort this out. And I think one of the things that's really important to me is that third condition about, you know, being willing to defend the right to allow public access on the property. Because again, BPL, we've been in this position where we've had to do that. Things aren't always so straightforward and, you know, deeds can be challenged and you never know what the future holds. So I think, you know, it sounds to me like there's, I think there's probably a pathway forward here, and it does really make me feel comfortable that there is that commitment to defending the right to public access on the property going forward. So that gives me some comfort in this.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. Any other comments? Catherine, yes, I thought I saw your hand go up. Catherine.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. My vote still at this point has not changed. I think that this is a great project. However, I would like to see the path with the heirs exhausted. I would prefer that we table it until there is more definitive information as to we can get guaranteed access from the heirs. I really truly feel, I know that there has been some past projects that guaranteed public access has been waived. However, I feel that the LMF statute strongly states that public recreational access is at its core. And I feel that without that guaranteed access, I cannot change my vote to a yes. So that's how I stand at this point. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. Are you making a motion to table?
No, I am not at this time because I would like to hear other board members' comments as well.
Okay, thank you. Matt Hunter?
Yes, at the August meeting, I spoke about a couple reasons that I supported going forward with this funding in terms of the extraordinary ecological assets associated with this and the what seems to me a very, very low risk of losing public access. But I'd like to mention a third perspective that's I've thought about since then, and that is if we do not go forward with this, I fear that we're going to be putting a really chilling blanket over proposals from half of the state of Maine, the half that of townships that are free of public roads. Our opportunities for really guaranteed public access in the absence of public roads, there's always going to be some questions. And I don't want to take half the state of Maine off the table for LMF projects. I feel we might be doing that if we do not go forward with this.
Thank you, Matt. Any other questions or comments from the board? Staff, if you could go back to the copy where the motion is. I'm going to read into the record the motion, which is confirming funding for the Kennebago Headwaters and Kennebago Woodlands project with existing public access subject to the agreed upon special conditions. I believe we're going to have a split vote here, so
One more question.
before I call the question, Bob Retract.
So Catherine mentioned tabling this until we had clarity on the heirs. I'm not sure about the timing on that. You know, are we close to resolving that issue?
In terms of time, no, and Rangeley Lakes Heritage Trust has to close on this project in October. We're in the process of trying to borrow the money. The board's vote has made that more difficult. We're waiting to see if we can borrow the money. I mean, the Rangeley Lakes Heritage Trust has been trying to do this project for 25 years, and we have this one opportunity. I mean, if we can borrow the money, we'll borrow the money. but there's no way we can resolve the public access issue on the schedule that we have to make decisions to either do the project or kill it.
Last call for questions or comments. Feedback.
I'll pull the trigger.
Okay.
I would move that we table this pending the outcome of discussions with the heirs regarding the.
We have a,
I would say just a point of order. There's a motion and a second on the table, so we either have to vote on the motion and then you could table it, I think.
no, you actually would table the motion. This motion would be tabled, and then
Okay.
for a time certain.
So I'll say I do not support tabling the motion.
We'll have to get a second first. So we have a motion, and this is make sure this is clear to the board. This is a non-debatable motion.
I will second the motion.
Motion by Robert Myers, seconded by Catherine. I'm going to call the question on the motion to table. All those in favor of tabling, please signify by raising your hand. 1, 2, 3. Catherine, I'm going to have you raise your. I couldn't see your hand was out of. So we have 4 people who are in support of tabling. We have those opposed to tabling. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold on, 1, 2, 3, 4. And my vote would be in opposition to tabling. So it is a 5-4 vote to table. So the motion to table fails. So we are back on the motion at hand. And once again, I'll read it into the record to confirm funding for the Kennebago Headwaters and Kennebago Woodlands project with existing public access subject to the agreed upon special conditions. I am going to Barbara.
My preference would have been to wait to have it resolved. And I think the new policy that we reviewed this morning indicates, that would be our preference going forward. However, because I have a lot of trust in our LHT and Attorney Spencer, that they will diligently continue to pursue those heirs and give us legal public access. I'm going to change my vote and I'm going to vote to approve this today. I will say that, I personally have experienced landowners shutting down access. We all like to think they're benevolent. They're not. And if any of you know Tumble Down Mountain, when I was a little girl, I climbed it, loved it. Timberlands owned it. We thought that it would never be closed down, but I remember when it was closed off to public access. So I think the threat is real and I want this to be forever. And so I'm really looking at RLHT to say, please make this legal for us and for all our kids.
Thank you for that comment, Barbara. I'm going to call the question. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by raising your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have 5 in favor. All those opposed. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Motion passes with a simple majority. So thank you very much. I know these types of situations are not easy to work through. We all have very differing opinions. I think at the end of the day, we all share the same opinion. And I think it was just reflected very well by Barbara Trafton that we need to ensure that the Rachel Lakes Heritage Trust does its due diligence to ensure that we have good public access here. So we've got more due diligence to come on this project. So this is not by any means the end of it. So I appreciate the past conversation and appreciate the conversations today. So with that, we are going to move into the remainder of our agenda. Starting off, these are projects to remind the board, these are projects to be acted upon. And the first project is Winnebago Wood.
I think we had that as the motion. The motion you read had both headwaters and.
Did both. We did, we included both at the same time.
Yeah, but this is the motion to accept the appraisal.
This was,
Okay,
yeah. The director's new. You got a couple more meetings. Will pass it.
Which is usually less contentious than the other motion, so. So as we all know, this is the Kennebago Woodlands project, which is the 5,000 acres of uplands adjacent to the Kennebago River. Ignore the last bullet point, that has been resolved. So the Appraisal Oversight Committee met on August 29th to discuss this appraisal, which reported a value of 4.9 million, accepted by the AOC, and we have the first draft motion there.
Yeah, I move to approve the recommendation of the LMF Appraisal Oversight Committee and accept the appraiser's value of $4,900,000.
Second that motion.
Committee motion is not in second. Is there any comments or questions on the motion? Being none on the screen, none here in the room. Is there any objections to the motion? Being none, motion passes without objection. Back to Jason.
Okay, and public notice was advertised in the KJ and Press Herald on September 17th. No comments were received. So we have draft motion number 2 for you.
Would you like to make that motion? Jim?
Yes, I move to confirm the allocation of $750,000 in conservation recreation funding to support the acquisition, subject to standard conditions.
Second.
Motion by Jim, seconded by Barbara Trafton. Back to the board. Any questions or comments? Being no questions or comments, is there any objections to the motion? Being no objections, either on the screen or in the room, the motion passes. Okay, the easy part. Moving right along.
This one is mine as well.
Okay. B.
The Muddy River Forest is a 363 acre working forest easement on the north side of Sebago Lake to be held by Loon Echo Land Trust. This easement also includes some affirmative rights to Loon Echo Land Trust to develop trails and parking and to provide for public access to the property. And this one is ready to move very quickly to closing this fall, something that the board approves funding today. So the AOC on August 29th discussed this appraisal. The appraisal reported a value of $1,462,000 for the easement itself. Turns out taking all the development rights off of lakefront property makes a difference. This value was accepted by the committee, so there is draft motion number 1 for you.
I move to approve the recommendation of the LMF Appraisal Oversight Committee and accept the appraiser's value of $1,462,000.
Motion does not need a second, but I'm going to pause here because I was remiss in saying we have several members of the public, both in the room and online. And I wanted to say we're trying to be efficient in going through the agenda. But if a member of the public at any time, as we go through this, has a comment or question on any of these, I would ask you to please raise your hand. My apologies for not stating that up front. So we have a committee motion on the table to approve the recommendation. Any questions or comments? Being none, is there any objections to the committee motion on the table? Seeing none, motion passes without objection. Jason.
And public notice for this project was also advertised in the Economic Journal and Press Herald on September 17th, and no comments were received. And there is draft motion number 2.
I move that we confirm the allocation of $435,000 in conservation and recreation funding to support the acquisition, subject to standard conditions.
Second. Motion by Barbara, seconded by Roger Burley. Any discussion from the board? And seeing no other hands, is there any objections? Seeing no objections either on the screen or in the room, the motion passes.
Okay, Whitney Forest Jordan parcel is also mine. So this is the parcel that was added last year to the Whitney Forest project. It is 55 acres on the backside of the larger project, which just expands on the Whitney Forest acquisition by adding additional forests, wetlands, and trails. The project as a whole abuts the high school and is accessible by a walking and biking path. So and the board has already confirmed a final award of $235,000 based on the appraisal for the first parcel. So this allocation will be in addition to that allocation. And the AOC, again, on August 29th, discussed this appraisal, which was $39,000 and accepted by the committee. So there's draft motion number 1.
Half of the hardworking appraisal oversight committee. Move to approve the recommendation of the LMF appraisal oversight committee and accept the appraiser's value of $39,000.
You second, any comments or questions from the board? And seeing no other hands from the public, any objections to the motion? Seeing no objections on the board or no objections in the room, the motion passes. Back to Jason.
Public notice was advertised in the Chemic Journal, Press Hill, and Bangor Daily News. No comments were received. So we have draft motion number 2.
I move we confirm the allocation of $19,500 in conservation and recreation funding to support the acquisition, subject to standard conditions.
Second.
Motion by Barbara Trafton, seconded by Roger Burley. Is there any questions or comments from the board? Seeing no hands from the public. I'm going to call the question. Is there any objections to the motion? Seeing no objections on the board, or on the screen or in the room, the motion passes.
Right. Whitman Wharf is not mine.
Oh, I get to, oh, no. Witten's Wharf, it is mine. This is L&D LLC. This is the first of our, go back to that picture just real quick. This is the first of our working waterfronts of the last round to make it through the appraisal oversight process, principally because finding an appraiser is so darn difficult. But you can see this is the wharf to end all wharfs in a good way. Next slide, please. And these are the fisheries. Again, you get a good glimpse of this wharf, which is built, being rebuilt and is built to withstand pretty much everything. And a lot of fisheries out of here, and all kinds of infrastructure. This is 1.4 acres. This is a commercial working waterfront dream. Next slide, please. The Appraisal Oversight Committee met on August 29th to discuss this appraisal. The appraisal reported a fair market value of $1.665 million with the highest and best use of commercial fishing. And the committee accepted that appraised value. Just to remind people, when we have highest and best use, that is at working waterfront, we apply the 25% rule. So we're not looking for 1.665 million for the project. So we have a draft motion here for the to accept the Appraisal Oversight Committee's recommendation.
I move to approve the recommendation of the LMF appraisal oversight committee and accept the appraiser's value of $1,665,000.
Bob, any comments or questions on the motion? Jim?
Yeah, just a reminder just how difficult it is for three of us, especially when we get into this arena of complex income related valuations and trying to understand fishing populations. And it's a real chore.
Yeah.
Thank you for your work.
And for yours. Initial committee.
Buy everybody on that committee a cup of coffee. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none on the screen and none in the room, I'm going to call the question. Is there any objections to the motion? Seeing no objections either on the screen or in the room, the motion passes. I'm gonna tell you a fun little, oh, no, finish this. I gotta tell you a fun fact.
Okay, awesome. Okay, and thanks to Jason's help, because I was out, public notice for this project did go out on September 17th, and we did not receive any comments. So we prepared a draft motion number 2, and that would be that 25% number I was telling you about what the board would allocate in this case.
Okay. Hey, Rod?
I move we confirm the allocation of $416,250 in working waterfront access protection program funding to support the acquisition, subject to standard conditions.
Second.
Seconded by Barbara. Would appreciate a little more vim and vigor in there. Is there any questions or comments on the motion on the table? Seeing no other hands from the members of the public, I'm going to go right to a call in question. Is there any objections to this motion that's on the table? No objections either on the screen or in the room. The motion passes. The Whidden Wharf is the son of these folks, was hired 3 years ago as a Maine Marine Patrol officer, as one of our boating specialists. After 2.5 years, 3 years, he has been named the Marine Patrol Officer of the Year, voted in by the industry for the tremendous work he has done operating our patrol vessel Endeavor out of Booth Bay Harbor, where I believe he and his crew hauled at least 20,000 lobster traps, that boat alone last year, making some of the biggest cases we've made in a long time. So a little fun fact about the Whiddens. Okay, moving right along. I digressed. There goes my efficiency, but I don't know.
Next up is Rumford Community Forest in Rumford, Oxford County. This project is 445 acres located between downtown Rumford and Black Mountain to be acquired by Inland Woods and Trails. And a number of recreational opportunities offered by this land, which also contains wetlands and vernal pools. And it'll be managed with input from the town of Rumford's Community Forest Committee. So the Appraisal Oversight Committee met on September 13th to discuss this appraisal, and the appraisal reported a value of $690,000. The committee accepted this appraised value, and there is a draft motion.
I move to approve the recommendation of the LMF Appraisal Oversight Committee and accept the appraiser's value of $690,000.
I need a second. Any questions or comments from the board? Seeing no hands or additional comments from the public, is there any objections to the motion? Seeing no objections either on the screen or in the room, the motion passes.
No. Public notice for the Rumford Community Forest Project was in the Kennebec Journal on September 17th. No comments were received, and a second draft motion.
As a proud native of Rumford, along with Ed Muskie. Okay. I move we confirm the allocation of $345,000 in conservation and recreation funding to support the acquisition, subject to standard conditions.
Second that.
By Barbara, seconded by Jim Norris.
Nearby town of Dixfield.
Any discussions or questions from the board? And seeing no hands from the public, is there any objections to the motion? Seeing no objections on the screen or in the room, the motion passes. Moving right along.
Yes, Lexington Township. This is the Lexington deer wintering area. Right, a lot of acres, including the highest quality deer wintering habitat, freshwater wetlands, inland wading bird and waterfowl habitat, frontage on freshwater streams that contain habitat for brook trout. And IFNW plans to make the foundation for a new wildlife management area, which is pretty exciting. And there are abundant recreational opportunities as well on this land. Here's your location map. The AOC met to discuss the appraisal on September 13th. And the appraisal reported a fair market value of $1.12 million, and the committee accepted the appraised value. We drafted a motion number 1.
Move to approve the recommendation of the LMF Appraisal Oversight Committee and accept the appraiser's value of $1,120,000.
You want to add, get me a bottle of water because I'm going to be hoarse by the end of this meeting.
We're almost there.
We have a motion on the table. Are there any questions or comments on the motion? Being no questions or comments and no hands on the screen, are there any objections? Being no objections on the screen or in the room, the motion passes. Back to Laura.
Thank you. And now the public notice was run in the Kennebec Journal and the Portland Herald on September 17th. We have received no comments and we prepared draft motion number 2.
Yes, I'd like to move to confirm the allocation of $500,000 in conservation and recreation funding to support the acquisition, subject to standard conditions.
Second.
Motion by Jim Norris, second by Roger Burley. Any questions or comments on the motion? Seeing none, is there any objections? Seeing no objections on the screen or in the room, the motion passes. Great.
Moving through Haystack Mountain, check out that view, Montville, Waldo County. Please, next screen. Okay, this is that 57-acre community conservation project. It's currently acquired by the Friends of Haystack Mountain. Midcoast Conservancy will be acquiring this. This is going to be the basis for the LMF funding. It will be the transfer to Midcoast Conservancy. Blueberry fields, lots and lots of views, including over to Cadillac Mountain and the Blue Hill. And lots of access points, including a trailhead about 200 yards from the elementary school. The Appraisal Oversight Committee met back on June 6th. This is when there were a couple of questions that got resolved. The appraisal reported a fair market value of $270,000, and the committee accepted the appraisal. We have draft motion number 1.
I move to approve the recommendation of the LMF Appraisal Oversight Committee and accept the appraiser's value of $270,000.
Motion on the table. Is there any questions or comments? Seeing no hands and nobody in the room, is there any objections to the motion? Seeing no hands or no objections on the screen or in the room, motion passes.
And we ran the public notice for the Haystack Mountain project on September 17th. No comments were received from either the Kennebec Journal or the Portland Press Herald. So there is draft motion number 2.
From the allocation of $135,000 in conservation and recreation funding to support the acquisition, subject to standard conditions.
Second.
Second by, losing my mind, second by Jim. Motion by Roger, seconded by Jim. Is there any questions or comments on the motion? Seeing no hands on the screen or in the room, is there any objections to the motion? Seeing no objections on the screen or in the room, the motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
And
Last but not least, Johnson Brook Sisk on the Cary Yorktown line in York County. This is a 56-acre fee acquisition that is part of the Mount Agamonchus to the Sea project area, abutting conservation land on the north and south. We access by trail from adjacent Cary Land Trust property and includes wetland streams and upland forest habitat. So the AOC met back on June 6th to discuss this one. It was tabled over the summer while they worked on some access questions. The appraised value of $150,000 was accepted by the committee. So we have draft motion number 1.
I move to approve the recommendation of the LMF Appraisal Oversight Committee and accept the appraiser's value of $150,000.
no motion, no second is needed. Is there any questions or comments? Seeing none in the room and none online. Is there any objections to the motion? Seeing no objections online or in the room, the motion passes. Halfway there, James.
Public notice, as you might imagine, was published in the Kennebec Journal and Press Herald on September 17th, and no comments were received. Draft motion number 2.
I move that we confirm the allocation of 47,500 in conservation and recreation funding to support the acquisition, subject to standard conditions.
A second.
Throwing a loop, throwing me for a loop. Motion by Barbara Kraft and seconded by Bob Myers. Any additional questions or comments? Seeing none, any objections? Seeing no objections online or in the room, the motion passes. Thank you very much for being so efficient. I'd like to congratulate all the applicants for receiving votes on their allocations. These are some really good projects. Seems like sometimes that this is almost a rubber stamp process, but just to remind everybody, there's been incredible conversations with the AOC to get to this point. And so again, I would like to commend the AOC for a lot of work. That was evident by the number of projects. So thank you very much for that work.
I move we give the award Bob a full bag of throat lozenges.
I'll pay for those out of pocket myself. Okay. Thank you very much. Okay. Moving right along to call for proposals. So we're on item number 7. Who's taking this one?
Well, in lieu of Bureau of Ag representative, I was going to hand the first farmland access protection program proposal overview to Jason.
Okay, so farmland protection projects, just as a reminder, these are reviewed and scored by a review panel that is appointed by Commissioner Beal. And then we receive recommendations from, or Commissioner Beal receives recommendations from that panel. You receive recommendations from Commissioner Beal and select the finalists and make the preliminary funding allocations for these projects, at which point they are often running with the regular LMF appraisal and due diligence process. Just before we begin, a quick summary of the available funds and the requests, which is to say we have a little bit over 2.6 million available and a little bit under 1.2 million requested. And we need to clear up one error on my part. There was a typo in the materials that I sent to Commissioner Beal. We had the wrong amount listed for Hope's Edge Farm. So I'm Commissioner, if you could just confirm that your recommendation to fund these projects extends to correcting that amount. Thank you. So I'm going to give you all a brief summary of the 5 projects that requested funding in this round, and then there'll be a draft motion for you. First project is Hall Edge Farm North, located in Wyndham. This is a proposal from the Maine Farmland Trust. 185-acre farm, has been a commercial dairy since 1941 and is selling milk to Oakhurst basically the entire time. And they are requesting $329,500. Also, just so you're aware, their proposal included the potential, included a provision in the easement that would allow the property to be split into 2 farms and potentially under different ownership in the future, and that was something that the review panel felt was appropriate. So it's not in as a special condition, just for your. Okay, second one is Hope's Edge Farm in Hope. This is a proposal from the Georges River Land Trust, 100-acre farm, and it is a small vegetable farm and also has sheep, serves local markets, sells a lot through CSA, and has an active community and education program that runs off the farm. They are requesting $177,500. And all of these projects will be using essentially the standard easement provisions, farmland protection easement provisions that are in the farmland protection workbook. Third farm is Springside Farm in New Vineyard, another Maine Farmland Trust proposal. 478 acres, including a large commercial woodlot. They are a commercial dairy and also have a farm stand that sells squash and pumpkins this time of year. And apparently gets a lot of people who make the side trip from the road going up to Sugarloaf to get their pumpkins. They are requesting 145,000. And I will say that these cows have one of the better views of any cows in the state. It is impressive up there. Next one is Ward Farm in Thorndike, 385 acres, again with a large commercial woodlot as part of the farm. A longtime dairy farm, one of the oldest farms in Thorndike, and now operated as hay and converting over to organic vegetables. So they are requesting 150,000. And the last farm this year is Winslow Farm, located in Falmouth. As a resident of Winslow, that keeps confusing me, but a 75-acre farm with a wide variety of products, vegetables, fruits, berries, and cut flowers that they sell through CSA, farmland, and wholesale. Our farm stand, rather, I should say. And they are requesting $387,500. So those are the 5 projects this year. I think that is a good representation of the diversity of agriculture in Maine. All excellent projects. The review panel and commissioner recommend that they are all fully funded. And there is a draft motion there for your consideration.
Before a motion is made, is there any questions on any of those projects? Roger.
May I digress for a moment?
Sure.
With your permission. I was my first term on this board in 99 to 2004. Bob Spear, Ag Commissioner, was sitting on this board. We had an extensive debate about what this program was going to do for farms. And it revolved around, do we help the farmer? Do we help the farming infrastructure? How do we do this? How can this make sense and not be a kind of a welfare program of any sort? And we settled on saving soil, dirt. That was it. And it was a really interesting discussion. And I think it was really the beginning of what we're talking about right here. And I was really happy to be a part of that. I basically knew nothing, but it seemed the only way that we could make an enduring contribution to farming in Maine. And it was so difficult because so many of these farms, this is almost a digression from my digression. So many of these farms, the appraisals were like $25,000 or $35,000. And so what's this going to do to an 80-year-old farmer whose grandchildren don't want the farm? I just remember those discussions so clearly. And it was really engaging for me, who was a working waterfront guy, to figure out the farming challenges.
I think that's a really good bit of history to highlight the importance of working farmlands, working waterfront, right? The synergies here. So, Jim.
I'd like to digress from Roger's digression.
Every time somebody digresses, their allowance gets smaller.
But in the same vein, during my earlier term, I recall being concerned that some of these farms didn't appear to be farms. They were, a horse ran a horse operation and were pretty cosmetic and so forth. And I served on the committee thanks to Barbara. And actually I do thank you, Barbara, in rating these projects. And so I got a chance to really see, how far it's gone and have more confidence that we're really making an impact on farms that are real farms, and that every one of them is different than the other. So I would encourage any of the fellow members, when this happens again in another round, to volunteer, because it's eye-opening and it's very important.
Can I pile on again? I'll wait.
Very, very quick, I'll give you 30 seconds.
Early 2000s, and we were seeing the end of the broccoli farms and all those things, and what the hell was going to go on in farming in the state? And it was just subsequent to that, that from my perspective, it was when the new young organic farmers are going to come in and use these soils in a different way than they'd been used before, which just totally underlined the smartness of these decisions, the value of them.
Thank you, Roger. We are done digressing. I actually have Commissioner Camuso's hand, then Barbara, and then Commissioner Beal.
Thanks,
Judy.
Commissioner. So my staff raised some concerns around the hall project, or I shouldn't say concerns, but they'd like the opportunity to work with the Farmland Trust and the landowner to come up with some better buffering for this particular project. This farm is located on the Pleasant River, where we have one of the last remaining state endangered mussel populations there. So before we come, I'm happy to support the motion to approve the preliminary. But before we finally approve the funding for this project, I would like to have some provisions in there to ensure that we are also protecting the freshwater resources in the Pleasant River there with some additional buffering.
Thank you, Judy. Barbara.
Several of these projects had woodlots on them. And I'm just wondering, in the construction of an agricultural easement, does that mean the woodlot could be cut to have additional agricultural lands, or is the woodlot staying as a woodlot? What, I don't know to whom to ask that.
The easement template that we use allows new fields to be created. The forest management is generally subject to a forest management plan, and the clearing of new fields is usually there. Clearing forested areas would be part of that plan, and it would be something that would have approval by the easement holder, but the easement template does allow establishing new fields.
Thank you, Jason. Follow up.
Yeah, it was also clear in each of the projects where they asked for soils information, and became apparent after looking at a few that there were more agricultural soils than there were current agricultural activity, which in my mind said it was reverting but it gave a clear indication that there were quality soils or soils suitable if the situation presented itself.
Thank you.
Well, that's a really good segue into what I wanted to just point out, which is that, our state's climate action plan has two, I think, really important goals embedded in it, which are to protect 30% of our natural and working lands by 2030. And one of the things I'd like to point out on that front is that when you actually break down how we're doing around, natural lands versus working lands, particularly farmland, we're really, really far behind, especially other states. So right now we talk about, 22% of the land is protected, but a very small percentage of that is actually agricultural land. So we have a long way to go on that front. The other goal that I think is really important is the goal around increasing the amount of food that we consume and produce and consume here in our state to 30% by 2030. And we have a long way to go on that front too. So to the point that there is farmland under forest right now that actually comprises of good farmland soils. I think that we can expect that there will be a little bit of flux that happens on some of those particular parcels over time as farmers are trying to do what they can with their land. But all in all, we also are very committed to keeping our forested lands forested. So we're working on all of these fronts, and I think in balance, we'll definitely get there. And then just the final point about Commissioner Camuso, the information about this habitat issue came to me kind of late in this process. In fact, I found out about it yesterday. So I certainly would support moving this project forward. with the knowledge that, you know, we can get more up to speed on what the issue is and try to work with all of the parties to come up with a recommendation going forward.
Thank you. Any other questions? I do want to, I certainly understand Commissioner Camuso's points and concerns around raising the issues for habitat and habitat protection, especially the fact that we've got a critically imperiled species within this section. I have to say I'd become hesitant putting controls in or in place, right? I mean, we could, to me, this is going to set a precedent if we do something here. And I think it's going to, and I'm not saying this to not vote on this today, but we're going to set a precedent potentially. If we use a concern about a piece of property where we're going to put a farmland easement or protect something in working waterfront, because there's no farm or no working waterfront that one of our agencies couldn't go to and find a problem. So I think we have to keep that in mind. That is not at all to take away from the concern that IFW has raised. So I think those conversations need to happen, and I'm hoping that that this will spur that conversation to happen, and we can find a way to ensure best management practices that are more protective of this particular species. So I just wanted to make sure that that was clear and on the record before we vote. And again, this is step one, right? So more conversations can happen following that. Okay, I think a motion would be in order. Jim.
Yes, I move that we select Hallett's Farm North, Hope's Edge Farm, Springside Farm, Ward Farm, and Winslow Farm as finalists with a total preliminary allocation of $1,189,500.
Second.
It's quick.
Motion by Jim Norris, seconded by Roger Burley. Are there any questions or comments on the motion on the floor? Any questions or comments? I should have opened it up to the public. Is there any member of the public that has a comment on any of these proposals? Seeing none. Is there any objections to the motion? Seeing no objections being made on the screen or in the room, the motion passes without objection. Thank you very much. Congratulations to those finalists. Moving right along, we are going into item 7B, which is working forest conservation and recreational proposals. Are we going to do ground rules first, or are we? Because if I'm doing ground rules, somebody better put them on the board. I'm just going to make them up on the floor.
We have the slide set up to do available funds first and then ground rules.
That sounds good. That sounds good. Let's take them out of order. So.
Here you see available funds and requests. We're looking at 3 projects, which you all have looked at and scored: South Bog, 3 ponds, 1 forest, and Beaver Brook, for a total request of $1,562,000. And with set asides, you can see that goes up to $1,796,300, which we do have the available funds for currently. As up on top, you can see available and currently is 9 million. After this, for the next round 12, we'll have roughly 7 million and change left.
Any questions on available funds? Seeing none. Ground rules. I'm just going to hit the highlights here. Proposals are confidential until scored. This prevents undue influence on the board through the scoring process, and it's in accordance with the SOM purchasing policies. Board members will refrain from discussing proposals with applicants, the public, or members of the press. Scoring is based on the information contained in the proposed applications. Those here to observe will avoid any actual appearance of attempting to influence the scoring process. Likewise, board members will refrain from asking questions of the public. Conflict of interest, the LMF statute states if a charge or or of bias or personal financial interest, direct or indirect, is filed against any member requesting that member to withdraw from a proceeding of the board, that member shall determine whether or not to withdraw and shall make the determination part of the record of the proceeding. The board will endeavor to stick to the agenda and avoid broader topics. Sorry. Will avoid broader topics that will not relate to the scoring process. One more slide on that. Did I get them all? You got them all condensed into one slide? Consensus scoring. So if you want to do this one?
I'm happy to do this. So what has happened to date is the first week in September, each board member was provided the applications as well as scoring sheets with overview instructions based on our workbook. Each board member has submitted those scores to staff and they have been compiled. Our next step will be going into executive session to discuss these scores. And as you can see here, if a change of bias or personal financial interest, direct or indirect, is filed against the member requesting that member to withdraw from a proceeding of the board, that member shall determine whether or not to withdraw and shall make that determined part of the record of that proceeding. It is okay to abstain from scoring or participate in the discussion of a particular proposal at your discretion. This is what helps the board maintain transparent, predictable process and maintain program integrity. We've not been notified of any conflicts, and I'm assuming the board is very familiar with the rules behind consensus scoring.
Great. So you gonna do this one too?
I'm happy to. So the goal of the scoring and evaluation process is 1, to ensure the fairness and objectivity in the review of proposals, and 2, to ensure the funds are awarded to the bidder or bidders whose proposal best satisfies the criteria of the RFP or as contained in the LMF workbook. Each evaluated takes notes and we have submitted those with their scoring and we have received to date each board member's scores.
And we will ask that after the presentations, each of you give me your final scores with any changes to the preliminary scoring that you've already given me.
Thank you, Jason.
Slide.
Okay, where there is general consensus, adopt board average scores. And 2, discuss criteria, there's scoring, if there are A, to score discrepancies, or B, the average score is not an eligible score.
As I have in the past, I will highlight those for you during the discussion.
Yes, thank you. And here you can see the categories that are contained in the workbook that the consensus scoring process was based on. All right.
Okay.
For presentation.
So we have 3 presentations today: Beaver Brook, South Bog and Beaver Mountain, and 3 Ponds, 1 Forest, which I love the name of that proposal. Should be a book, I think. Great book. We will take public comment, but we'll 5-minute presentation, 5 minutes for the board Q&A, and public comment after each one. Once we complete that, we will take a 5-minute break, and then we will go into consensus scoring, and that will be in executive session. So our first up will be, that I'm assuming is the next slide, is Beaver Brook Preserve. And hey, I'm here. Okay, you could step to the podium and introduce yourself. And is Laura in charge of the clock?
I wasn't, but I can be. Are you in charge of the?
I will be timing this
Oh,
in
good.
2.5 minutes. I'll move you to the next slide and there will be a 1-minute warning before your 5 minutes are up.
Okay, awesome. I've got my watch here too. It's not much.
And
Go. Well, before you go, if anybody goes over, we take money away. I'm just.
What's the percentage this year?
About 4 or 5%. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. My name is Scott Kunkler. I'm the Conservation Director with the Scarborough Land Trust, and I'm talking about Beaver Brook Preserve today. And I wanted to thank you for the opportunity to resubmit this application. We presented it in the last round. And I reapplied because I truly believe in this project, that it is very valuable for people, for wildlife and watershed protection. And I think it makes a great fit with the Land for Maine's Future program. So I wanted to give you a status update on our project. We have a signed purchase and sale agreement. All due diligence is completed, and we've secured funding from the Maine Outdoor Heritage Fund, as well as the town of Scarborough. So we've got all matching funds secured. The town fully is in support of this project. They're providing in-kind services to help us build the parking lot. So really all we have left is this last piece of funding, and we're really hoping that we can get the support of LMF to finish out the project and conserve it. So last time I was here, I focused a lot on the ecological values of the property. Today, I want to focus a little bit more on the recreational values of the property. There are approximately 22,000 people in Scarborough, and that's an increase of 4,000 in just the last 10 years. And that trend is continuing. Many of us, and I say that because I'm a resident of Scarborough, we have families, we go to work, we have to get the kids to and from school, we're taking them to soccer practice, dance lessons, we have grocery shopping, we have a lot of different things that pull our time away. And it's very difficult for us to make the 2 to 3 hour trip to go hiking and go into a natural area. And so if we have more conserved properties within town, within like a 5 or 10 minute drive, it's really going to give us the ability to connect more on a weekly or even a daily basis with these properties. And it's a place that we can take our kids, hike, go for, take our dogs to go for a walk, listen to the birds. And, if we can make it easier for people to get to natural areas, right, we're going to be able to get them connected to natural areas. And if we can connect them to natural areas, they're going to be more interested in protecting natural areas. And if they're more interested in protecting areas, then we can get more people interested in connecting to nature and et cetera, et cetera. Right? So it's just a spiral around and around. And, we've seen that spiral happening in Scarborough. That the town has recently passed a 30 by 30 goal for the town. I'm currently working on 12 different projects around town to conserve properties. And demand for recreational opportunities is increasing. So just a year ago, we had 7 preserves with 7 trails, on them. We had about 13 miles of trail. In the last year, we've added trails to 2 of our preserves. We've added about a mile of trails. So now we have 9 preserves with about 14 miles of trails. But even so, our trails get heavy use. And we estimate a total of about 70,000 visits per year in our preserves. 2 of our preserves, we've had to double the size of the parking lot because the number of cars that are parking on the street trying to access the trails is getting overwhelming. So we've doubled the sizes of our parking lots. One of the challenges we have with adding trails to properties is that a lot of our properties have wetlands on them. And that just makes it challenging to develop trails, the funding required to build the trails through wetlands. So the advantage with Beaver Brook Preserve is we already have a snowmobile trail that goes through the property. It's relatively easy for us to add a little bit more trails to that and extend it to make about a 1 mile trail system within Beaver Brook, almost relatively immediately, which would be a great benefit for people. The other thing we've seen a lot of increases in is permits for hunting. As land gets developed in Scarborough, there's less and less opportunities for people to hunt. So conserved properties are where people are hunting now. We had over 200 permits, or about 200 permit requests last year. We're seeing an increase of anywhere from 10 to 15 permits per year for people requesting to hunt on our properties. So Beaver Brook Preserve would provide that additional opportunities for hunting in the town. I think the town and the state have done a good job in Scarborough of providing access to saltwater and brackish water areas like the marsh and the ocean. What we need, I think, is more access to freshwater streams. We have 4 preserves that have access to freshwater for fishing. Beaver Brook would immediately add another preserve that people would have the opportunity to go fishing on a wild brook trout stream. We also, if you look at the data on ebird.com, most of the areas that people are birding that are outside of the marsh are on Scarborough Land Trust preserves. And they're finding close to 140 different species of birds on the properties. And again, this would provide another area as areas to get developed for people to come out and go birding. And I think my time is up, but I just want to say I really appreciate it. I hope you'll be able to support us in this project. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Questions from the board? Commissioner Camuso and then Barbara Trapp.
Great, thanks, Commissioner. I'm curious, what are you referring to when you say that you are giving permits for people to hunt on your property?
Yeah, so we want to know, we want people to register with us to know who's out hunting on our properties. We don't want just people going out and hunting without letting us know first. So what people do is we have an application form on our website. They can fill out the application, they submit it to us, we review it, and then we provide access for them. So it just gives us a chance to know who's going to which properties. And then it also allows us to track. I mean, if we've had a problem in the past with somebody with hunting, if they're not following the rules or whatnot, you know, we have that ability to talk with them. And I don't think we've ever denied anyone a permit. We usually give everybody a permit, but it's just basically for that purpose, so we can.
What kinds of hunting do you allow?
We do at least bow hunting and shotgun. I'm not sure about muzzle loading. I don't get into the specifics of the hunting. That's our stewardship director. But we also, yes, we do bow, shotgun.
What about, do you allow people to hunt with dogs?
I don't think so. I don't know if I've heard that before, but I can't verify that. I'd have to check on it.
Thank you.
I've got Barbara Trafton, Roger Burley, and I think I was seeing Jim's hand. Barbara.
So you said you had 70,000 visits on this property and you have 21,000 people in Scarborough. But it is pretty close to the marsh, and I know that people from Brunswick, Lewiston, Auburn, Portland, I mean, it's a real draw to this area. Do you think that property, because of birding, because of things like that, would attract people from a wider area than just Scarborough?
Absolutely. But not only do we get a huge influx of visitors over the summertime to Scarborough that are also accessing not only the ocean, but they're accessing reserves. They're looking for places to go hiking. Yeah, we do have people that are coming in from all different areas because, South Portland has done a great job of conserving land, and Portland has done a great job. But they also have limited availability for hiking trails and preserves. And so there's definitely people coming in from those areas and utilizing our trails. We get a lot of comments and we're out talking with people on the trails. And
is that snowmobile trail a connector so that people pass through the property? Is it a part of a larger trail?
Yeah, so it connects up with, so Saco Pathfinders is the one that manages the trail. And there's trails in Saco. They run up through into Gorham, and then there's a chute out through Scarborough that extends about halfway through the town. It goes so it's mostly the western part of town. It goes almost to the turnpike. I don't know exactly how many miles it is, but it runs through our property. So yes, it's definitely a connector. People would be able to access our parking lot, hop on the trail, and head out and connect in with all these other trails through through Saco, Gorham, and I believe the trails even connect through Gorham out into like the state trails. So yeah, it's a large number.
Just one other connection or question about connections. So this property abuts Beaver Brook, and I'm looking at this little map where you have all these streams and things that seem to converge and come into the marsh. Do they all come into Nonsuch River? Is that what they eventually do?
Yes.
And
no, I'm sorry. No, the Scarborough River. So
the Scarborough River.
Yeah, so the marsh, there's 5 rivers basically that come that make up the marsh. Scarborough is one of them, and so Beaver Brook and a number of other streams come into the Scarborough, and the Nonsuch comes in and joins with the Scarborough River. The Libby River joins into the main part of the marsh, so they all get connected.
So protecting the uplands has a great impact on the Scarborough Marsh because this is all the watershed that comes down
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you. Roger?
Can you briefly describe the hunting regulations or seasonal notifications and posting?
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
The hunting season postings and regulations in brief, very brief.
What are our
Yes.
regulations? Oh, you know, I'd have to brush up on them. We have them on our website. What are the regulations? Well, we follow obviously state regulations with hunting seasons, and the requirements. And then, I'm not quite sure I can go into more detail than that. I wish I could get them. Okay, so you're right. So we offer hunting during those times. Obviously, you're not gonna be able to hunt across trails, right? So we designate, you know, you'd have areas that you'd have to go to in order to not cross paths with hikers, for hiker safety. So we do have opportunities in our preserves to separate hiking and hunting, for safety measures. I'm not sure if I'm answering your question.
Leaves it hanging a little bit for me. I'm not a hunter. I have been in the past, but I'm just curious about the intersection of hunting and hiking. That's all.
Yeah, I mean, definitely the hunters will be using the trails to access their sites. We encourage people to wear blaze orange during the hunting seasons. We let people know about that on our websites as to when hunting seasons are open, so people are aware of that, you know, they'll be hunting at these times. We've never had an issue of, you know, hunters and hikers, you know, any safety issues that I know of regarding that. There might be philosophical differences between people, but yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. That, I think that takes up our time. So with that, thank you for the presentation. Appreciate that.
All right, thank you so much.
Presentation with Stealth Bog and the Beaver Mountain. All right, welcome. Introduce yourself and yeah, we'll get the hook ready.
Good morning. My name is Bill Patterson. I'm the Deputy Director at Bureau of Parks and Lands. And pleased to have the opportunity to introduce you to the South Bog to Beaver Mountain project this morning. In the absence of our Director of Planning and Acquisition, which we look forward to filling in the very near future, we have a variety of staff filling in on different acquisition projects. And this one is mine. So I'm gradually getting to know this property, mostly through easement and maps thus far. I've been across it, but I look forward to getting it out on land sometime this fall. I also would like to thank our project partners. David Miller is the Executive Director of the Rangeley Lakes Heritage Trust. And Nancy Perlson also is working on contract and a great resource in terms of project details. And the project really made possible by the years of work really on the part of Rangeley Lakes Heritage Trust, and we're thrilled to have them bring this project to us and move it forward. So I think the project really speaks for itself in terms of the numbers. I'm going to review some of those numbers for you. At 13,830 acres, you see the yellow block in the center of the map there. It is really somewhat unique in terms of the size and scope of a North Woods working forest parcel in terms of its proximity to communities that will use it to recreate, fishing, hunting, motorized uses. I'll recap some of those. And also development threat is very real in this area. With some significant development already adjacent to it, which also offers the plus of lots of people in the area accessing it. So some of the highlights are the 31 miles of streams in the 2 remote ponds. The Rangeley Lakes area is nationally known for its fisheries resources and high quality destination for people from all over the country. And in addition to that, there's a high elevation subalpine fir community, which has late successional characteristics, which will be addressed and conserved in the easement that we're working on to protect those permanently. Other recreational features are the approximately 11.75 miles of ITS snowmobile trail, which has important connections to New Hampshire, Canada, and so it's really a regional trail system as we know well, and a great resource. There are, I think it's 13 miles of ATV trails on the property, which are more localized trails, but also very popular and well used by local communities. Finally, among the recreational opportunities is hiking trail up to Mountain Pond, which is maintained by the Trails for Rangeley Area Coalition. And so that's popular as well. I did want to address the deer habitat on the property. While it didn't score points for deer habitat, I did speak with Sarah Boyden, who's the regional biologist at IFW, about the importance of this area, and feel that the opportunity that the management planning process under an easement will offer is going to be important to future deer habitat in the area, especially being close to populated areas where there are dynamics of feeding and other factors. I think the long-term possibilities, you can see there's a good, if you look at the darker colors on the map, there's a good deal of softwood habitat on the property, which will be important opportunity to manage for deer in the future. Finally, I want to point out just the importance of the LMF funding. The $1 million request for this project is matched 4 to 1, largely by federal dollars. It's an extremely opportunistic time to be making this investment with the Forest Legacy Program well funded currently. So this brings critical match to the table to accomplish this project. So happy to answer any questions, and I'm sure we can draw on our local partners as well if I don't know the answer.
Thank you, Phil. Jim?
Yeah, I have the map again. The yellow boundary lines, interior boundary lines, which appear to be out parcels. I recall when we were doing the Orbiton property, which is just south of this, that there were some out parcels that potentially had some real serious conflicts with the overall purpose of the remaining. Can you describe what those out parcels are and how they may or may not affect the easements?
Sure, there are two things, and maybe Nancy could address the two yellow spots on the map. I'm aware of two, in a moment, I'm aware of two things for the easement. The landowner has requested retention of a camp lot parcel internally. We're negotiating on that right now. It is allowable within Forest Legacy, would rather not see it. But we're negotiating on that. The other are some retained gravel rights for forest management, and we're just clearing up that, but we don't anticipate any issues there. The two specific yellow outlots there, does it pertain to what I just described?
Actually, yeah, so those, for some reason, that's an LUPC, parcel finder map, which shows the boundaries of the property. The one on the lower right is an actual owned by a third party out parcel. There's a gravel pit there. So that will be excluded from the project area. The one in the upper left, I'm not sure why LUPC has identified it as a parcel. There's a small area, I think it's 10 acres or so, that's retained gravel rights, that's very old. And in our title work, we're sort of researching whether that's even applicable anymore. It may apply, benefit land across the road there, which is currently owned now by the state of Maine, which used to be owned by Noyes, who was the party that had that right. So I think there's only one technical out parcel, which is the one on the bottom right. And we are working on the possibility of maybe or maybe not having a development area, a small development area. Don't know exactly whether we'll have that or where, but that's not one of the things on that map yet.
But there's a potential for a camp lot. Is that what I'm hearing?
They have reserved that right. We're lobbying hard not to have that, but we haven't gotten there yet.
This property is owned by a German company, and I actually visited with the representative last week. We made a strong case. They have a very green presence on the internet. They really talk sustainability, et cetera. We can't promise anything, but we are working hard to not have that happen.
Okay.
This was part of the original Beirut ownership, the same as the Kennebago lands are Beirut ownership, but a few years ago, they sold it to this firm. So we're working with the Beirut people still, or the Wagner people, who still represent them.
Okay, thank you. Back to the board. Barbara.
Bill, I was looking at this lucky zoning map and parcel viewer, and it just goes to the development pressure on this parcel. And am I reading this right, that these are all individually owned lots? They don't necessarily have houses on them at this point, or do they? Are they?
Well, the LUPC parcel finder would show parcels. It doesn't show whether there's a house on it yet or not, but they're small parcels, which are mostly suitable for housing. Some of them are probably not yet developed, but it's pretty intense when you look at that map.
It's an incredible map to show the pressure.
And with the elevation on this property, the potential for views of the lakes and that sort of thing, it does have very legitimate development threat.
So also, the owner is really open and intent on keeping these trails there, the motorized. And actually, we're trying to get permission. We think we have a good shot at putting a foot trail up Beaver Mountain as well. It's not there, so. Mention the ecological preserve. Oh, and an ecological preserve too, actually. We're pushing for about, I think, a 600 acre eco reserve that would cover the rare subalpine terrain and the wetlands that have
Rusty blackbird.
Yeah, rusty blackbirds as well.
Any other questions? I think we're nearing our time. Last one, Barbara?
No, you said the rusty blackbird, the big nails flush.
It's habitat.
Thrush is not here, but it would be suitable habitat.
Suitable habitat.
On the mountain.
Yeah.
eBird has identified it, but the official MNAP was the rusty blackbird. So yeah, we've got everything from the high elevation to the low elevation, which those two habitat.
And we're also getting permission, we think, from the landowner to do more restoration work on the upper South Bog stream and tributaries. We did the lower South Bog 12, 15 years ago.
Okay, I think we've exhausted our time as a board. Thank you, Phil, for the presentation. We appreciate you staying on task. And the last one, great title of 3 Ponds in a Forest. Great. Welcome.
Hi, I'm Joan Ray. I'm the Director of Land Conservation for Coastal Rivers Conservation Trust. We have a project, 3 Ponds, 1 Forest, which we're requesting money for. This is actually comprised of 3 ponds and the land that connects them. There's 3 properties that we're currently working on, 2 of which we're requesting funding for. The first one was a donated easement on what's known as either Weber or Muscungus Pond. That one is part of the project, but we're not asking for funding. So we are asking for funding for the properties in orange here. The 2 upper ones are known as Curlin. The lower one is Kravitz. They're 167 acres for the 2 upper ones and 230 acres for the lower one. And so together they do connect Pemaquid Pond or Pemaquid Lake with McCurdy Pond and Weber Pond. Together they have, well, each of these properties has about half a mile of pond frontage. So together over a mile of pond frontage. And they connect other town and land trust lands. So they serve as the connection. Altogether, it's about 1,000 acres that we're trying to conserve. This is the first phase of it. There's some really great wildlife habitat on these properties. They have about 32 acres between them of inland waterfowl and wading bird habitat. The southern property, which is Kravitz, has the most amazing vernal pools I have ever seen in my life. We have found 3 pools so far. The first one we got out there too late to look for wood frog eggs, but the first one had 20 spotted salamander eggs. Egg masses. The second one had 150. And the third one, we quit counting about a quarter way around the pond at 100 spotted salamander egg masses. And so just really, really amazing habitat. We got back out once they'd hatched and found about equal numbers of wood frog and spotted salamander tadpoles in the one pond that we looked at. So pretty amazing. It's also a habitat corridor running from further down the Pemaquid Peninsula all the way up past the ponds and eventually up past Route 1. We do have occasional moose and bear down in this area, so they are passing, somewhere they're getting across Route 1, getting down onto the peninsula, or maybe they're swimming over, but we do have that. There's amazing recreational opportunities in this area. There's fishing, hunting, swimming, birding. We're going to be putting in a trail that connects the existing Pemaquid Pond Preserve up here with the hillside trail, which is the town of Raymond Trail that does not show on this map. We plan on about 6 to 8 miles of interconnected trail, which on the peninsula, that's a long trail. The longest trail we have right now is, 5 or 6 miles if you piece together like pieces of different things. So this is going to be really great. It will also be part of what we're calling our loop trail, for lack of a better name yet. But it will be a trail, a canoeing and kayaking trail that will start up here at the top of Pemaquid Pond, go down through Pemaquid River, hooking up with Bisky Pond, back into the river, and then going ultimately all the way out to Pemaquid Harbor. So people will be able to put in at the top and paddle 20 miles. And we want to have various different stops along the trail where people can stop and picnic or whatever. So.
Wait for her to say she's done.
I'll forget.
So these properties are really at risk of development. This property, Curlin, we have already purchased. It was on the open market, and we felt like if we didn't purchase it, it would be, numerous, huge lakefront house lots. This property and this property, which actually are connected, did not go on the market. It will go on the market if we don't purchase it, but the landowner came to us hoping that we would be able to conserve the property, which is that.
Great. Thank you very much for your presentation. Your time has elapsed.
Okay.
But I am sure somebody will ask a question that might spur you to think about the last comment you were just about ready to make. Jim.
Yeah, you talked about the blue trail. How did that blue trail how is it impacted by these bodies of water? It sounded like you were going north or going in another direction, not through those bodies of water.
Yeah, it will start at the head of Pemaquid Pond, which the Curlin property is on. And so that would be, okay, so here's Pemaquid Pond. The blue trail will go down through here, along here. There's a really great stopping point here. Then it will progress through this little piece of the river, through Bisky Pond, and then the river goes out again here.
A life trail. Bob.
Couldn't see quite where you were saying, but this would be a very unique kind of offering in this part of Maine to have 20 miles of canoeing. And I assume part of it's like the part that's on the river, that's not like class 3 rapids or anything.
No, there's one obstruction on Bristol Mill Dam, which is right here, actually. I've done it before. You do need to obviously portage around the dam, and there's a little bit of like pretty shallow whitewatery stuff just below that. And when I did it, I just portaged around that as well. So, yeah.
And so I was just wondering about the access to this in terms of the number of people that you might expect to be able to take advantage of it. And I did kind of look at your population, which is, well, Damascotta is like around 2,300 and Newcastle around 643. But I'm just wondering, does this expand a great deal in the summertime? Would you imagine, I'm just imagining what kind of population center you would imagine being attracted to this?
So this is the upper part of the Pemaquid Peninsula. I don't know the population number for the Pemaquid Peninsula, but it's probably around 20,000 in the winter time. In the summertime, the population expands greatly. And we also expect that this will be big enough and spectacular enough to attract people from, other counties outside the area, as well as being a great resource for summer visitors and locals.
Thank you.
I could say people from the greater metropolitan of Alma. Appreciate that.
Well, yeah, there. It's not very far from that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Any other questions from the board? Yeah, board.
I ran out of time. I know what you're going to say, and I didn't realize my time was so short. So.
Okay, I was just going to ask, we had spoken earlier this week about some changes to the budget, so I wanted to ask Joan if she could describe that to the board.
Do you like to ask that question through the chair?
Yes.
We'll allow the question to be routed through the chair on the budget.
Yes, originally we had requested $400,000 for this project with an additional $25,000 for stewardship. We did talk to Flora and through Flora to Steve Walker about expanding the request. And so what we'd like to request is $608,000 for this with the additional $25,000 for stewardship. And that's partly because we requested less from MNRCP than we originally had planned on asking. And it would also allow us not to take as much from our emergency revolving loan fund.
And I'd clarify that the match is still more than twice that what we typically receive.
Good clarification.
It's a $2,002,000 project. So we've secured most of the match. We're just waiting on MNRCP and LMF.
And because we spent a lot of time on making MNRCP available, I'm just wondering, maybe Steve, is this looking like a good match for them?
I believe so, yes, especially with the vernal pool values and other wetland values. Absolutely.
Great. Being no more hands, thank you very much, Joan, for the presentation. I think at this point in time, unless the board has any burning questions on any of the projects, we will take a 5-minute recess. Give staff an opportunity to do their magic with the other board members for going into executive session. And then we will start back up promptly at a little bit before 5 past, excuse me. Sound good? Great. So I will ask members of the public to skedaddle. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Hey, we're hiding and thanks, it's that you were out on the bay, but I couldn't.
Apologies.
I had asked.
Shows that
Get on that.
Together.
Thank you. Well,
I'd like.
Yeah, yeah.
We are still in public session because we need a motion. Go into executive session. A motion by Barbara, seconded by Roger Burley. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, is there any objection? No objection, motion passes. Thank you very much. So we're gonna need about now 3-minute recess while staff switches everything around. So we're going out of the public session on Teams and into the private session for the executive session.
I'm gonna stop.
Figuring that out by the lights up there.
But clever.
We are now out of executive session and back in main session. We have deliberated to make determinations on the allocation for the three projects that were brought to us today. And we have I'm going back and forth. So we have a draft motion here to present. If anybody would like to make the motion, Barbara?
I moved that we approve the following projects to receive a preliminary allocation of $1,770,000 of LMF Conservation and Recreation Funds. Beaver Brook, South Bog and Beaver Mountain, and 3 ponds, 1 forest.
Second.
Motion by Barbara, seconded by Roger. Is there any discussion on the motion?
Was it necessary to put comment about conditions in the motion?
Be communicated to the applicants separately. I think there's a slide about that.
Yeah, so because that would kind of tip the hand, I think. So I think that's why we do that kind of offline away from this process. So any other questions or comments on the motion? Seeing none, is there any objections to the motion? Seeing no objections online or in the room, motion passes without objection. So congratulations to the 3 applicants, which pertains to the initial allocation. Good work by the board and staff. I've said it the last time, I'll say it again. The process that we're using now compared to the old days of having staff go through and giving us the ability to say, it personally makes me think about this line a little bit differently as I'm going through them. I really think the system is, you get, right? So night and day compared to how we used to do it. So that concludes that portion of the agenda. And so the only thing left between us and lunch are staff updates.
So we can make these as quick as possible.
Excellent.
The first one, and Commissioner Beal, I don't want to steal your thunder, but I believe a bill is going to be put in to allow this board to vote by proxy with a representative similar to other boards and commissions.
The commissioners.
Yeah.
What about the rest of us?
The commissioner, sorry.
I could give some background. So I know Commissioner Kelleher and Commissioner Camus over here too. She would probably say the same, but we are automatically appointed to many, many boards. in our roles as commissioners. And this is the only board for which I'm not allowed to send a proxy, a deputy commissioner or somebody else to sit in the seat and convey, our perspective and to be able to vote. And so it just seems like a real outlier. This is actually something that I noticed and was going to propose a change for in my second year here, but if you all remember, we had a pandemic and priorities were shuffled, but this is just really a housekeeping issue that I think the way that the seats are described on the board, there are the appointed public members and there are the permanent members of the board. That's how our seats are described. And so it would just allow going forward, any commissioner sitting in the seat, they needed to send a proxy. They could, if they were sick, needed to be on vacation, got pulled to the legislature, any of the many things that could happen to throw our schedules off, but.
And so that is an agency bill
Yeah.
that has been approved by the governor, so it has been sent to the revisor's office for drafting. So
I was sort of joking, but what about us?
testify at the committee.
No, what about us sending a proxy?
You yourself have been appointed.
There we go.
I'm not sure I want anybody speaking for you. That's how I'm looking at it.
Your wisdom and experience is irreplaceable, man.
That's what I meant, Jim.
Yeah,
That's really what I meant.
you go with that, Ken.
I mean, obviously, this is something that Amanda and I and Judy talked about because of conflict. This is one board that I prioritize to ensure that I'm here, and I've tried to miss very few. I mean, look at MNRCP, which I never go to. Because I can send a staff, So I think the goal is to ensure that we are here voting. If Judy's sending Bethany's going to be voting with her.
I don't disagree with you guys doing it, but I only point out that we have conflicts, don't we, Bob?
To send Bob.
Sure. There's sort of a precedent on how boards and committees work. So I think we'd be running up against something there, but the precedent with boards that I am appointed to as a commissioner is that I have the ability to send a proxy for every single board except for this one.
I understand, that this makes sense in terms of, but I will say that the uniqueness of this board is that we're dealing very directly with things in your expertise, it's whether it's marine or it's agriculture, conservation, or forestry or beauty. So you bring unique insights. It's a small board. It's only 9 people. And so I think, I hope it'll remain a priority because I think your absence would be greatly missed.
Yeah, no, in no way, shape or form would this change this board being a priority in terms of being able to be present. It's just really, if all else fails, it's still representative.
You can have a proxy, Jim, but we get to pick who it is.
My next door neighbor.
Okay, stewardship fund policy, you saw in the packet that
You want to talk about rulemaking first?
Oh, rulemaking, sorry, yes, I should look at the slide, not the agenda. We were in conversations with the AAG the other day, and it came to our attention that in the LD 1969 that created the trust funds accounts, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There's a line in there that commits us to rulemaking for giving out grants and matching funds. So this would apply to the funding for projects. This would apply to access improvement grants, stewardship grants. So we did get on the regulatory agenda. We were able to amend that to give us this placeholder for rulemaking. I have yet to get my head around what it's going to look like, so I'll be working with Judy East and be able to report back. But that process lies ahead, and we'll have more information at the November board meeting.
And I think, don't we have internal meetings? Didn't she set one up?
I don't know yet. Maybe I haven't seen that.
Okay. For some reason I thought internal meetings. So,
Okay.
okay.
So that's that. Stewardship fund policy, we have been meeting, there's weird stuff that we have to set up. The treasurer has to set up accounts for stewardship funds to be able to go to state entities, the DSAs. This is not the case, of course, for private stewardship funds going to land trust, but.
I have slides on that,
Oh, we want,
unless you really want to.
but we don't need to if we're standing in the way of lunch, but just to let you know, we're working through that process. We were gonna put in a bill. It's now going to go into the supplemental budget bill, which gives us more time to work on the language. But that process is underway. At the same time, Jason drafted guidelines of the draft policy for the private side of things, the private stewardship funds. And it's also updated the project agreement language regarding stewardship funding as well.
So, yes, so on that slides. So you recall that we've talked about this a couple times since it was authorized. And as Steve said, for the awards to state agencies, we need to get some things addressed. So what we are proposing is that the board adopt a policy that would apply only to awards made to cooperating entities so that we can start getting some of that money out the door to land trusts. The draft policy is in the board materials. Highlights it to be the same eligibility amounts that we've been using for access improvement grants that scales up to a maximum of 25,000. Subject to match requirements governed by language in the project agreement that we're still working on with the AG's office. The language in the policy is not the project agreement language, so we don't need to get it drafted to that standard yet. And what we would do would be any project that has closed or will close before we get everything sorted out. When we do get it sorted out, we will invent a process for them to come back and apply for that money. And then going forward, we would include the stewardship award in the final award and they would receive it at closing. So there is a draft motion there, or now would be a good time for further discussion.
Didn't realize we had an action item here.
Is this time sensitive that we have? to do
Yeah,
it?
I know. Is it time sensitive? You referenced budget action though.
So I think it could probably wait until the November meeting.
Yeah. I didn't spend any time thinking about this, so I wouldn't mind a little more time. Is that okay with the board? So we will move this to the November agenda. Okay.
Okay.
The staff updates then.
Yep, and climate scoring, we are still working with the designated state agencies on what will fit their workload. And Flora, if you want to give a brief update on that, unless that covers it.
I think that pretty much covers it. Just the only thing is that Mac volunteered to help us with this and we thought we would get you something a little sooner, but we still hope to get you something for the next board meeting, Mac. So thanks.
So again, coming back in November.
No pressure.
If you're looking at scoring, there's another issue in our scoring that I don't think we're all in agreement on, and that's the new language in, I think it was 2021 that was put into the budget around giving additional points to projects that were near population centers, I think. And then we had a discussion about what is a population center. So for instance, today we gave credit to Damerscott for being a population center. Is that what the legislative intent was? So I think if you're looking at climate scoring, could you also look at that new language and and give us some guidance so that we can be more consistent about what a population center
I
is.
think that's a good idea, because it's come up a lot.
It's come up and we treated it unevenly
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
we want to all work on the same premises.
that's something staff can
Yeah,
ponder a little bit.
absolutely. Yeah, we're hoping to work on workbook changes. Of course, rulemaking is gonna influence that, but we'll bring that back for the November board meeting as well.
I have one other thing that I asked that we take a look at, and that's how our lovely new trust fund that's generating $100,000 plus is actually being managed, and where it is, and whether that's our only option for management. I think we've raised the possibility that the Maine Community Foundation also does an excellent job managing large funds of money. So if there would be time on our November meeting, could we take a look at understanding how that's being managed on our behalfs now?
Yeah, absolutely. And I did forward that question after the last board meeting. And have not received an answer back, but
Yeah.
as soon as, yeah.
Push it on.
You sent that to the controller's office, to Doug Cotton.
I did not send it to Doug.
Yeah, I would send it to Doug. That original conversation was prior to the approval of that, where we brainstormed about, who in fact could do that. Now, I don't, without going back and looking at the bill, I don't know if that flexibility will exist, but it'll be nice to know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
We'll get that answer for you.
Yeah. Okay.
Any
Anything
other
else?
thoughts for November from anybody?
Other than some short digressions, thank you for your efficiency today, adding in a motion to reconsider. We still, finished somewhere on time today, which I appreciate, because the rest of my day is gonna go to, you know what, very quickly. So, thank you very much, and congratulations to all those who received allocations. We'll thank you for next round. Thank you. Motion to adjourn. Thank you.